Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. The All-Star break is almost past us. We're almost back to regular basketball. We'll see NBA basketball back tomorrow. But today we did have some news stories to break down, some that are kind of exciting in terms of players coming back from injuries, others that are a little strange, maybe a bit disappointing, and I guess that's where we'll start. By the way, I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA. Keith Smith, you can find him at Keith Smith NBA over on Twitter. Keith, let's start with Kemba Walker, done for the season, and I've got a lot of people on Twitter, yourself included, saying why don't the Knicks just buy him out so he can keep playing if they've just decided, sorry Kemba, you're going into exile.
Yeah, it sounds like the Knicks want to use his contract in the trade this offseason, which is their only reason why they wouldn't buy him out. Yeah, it's been disappointing to see what's happened thus far in this return to New York for Kemba, or I guess return home is the better way to put that. He's a Bronx native. Everybody was super excited to see him back there, and he has played in 37 games, started all 37, but he's not really himself. He shot 40% from the field, 36% from 3. So that's not too bad, but he can't make baskets around the rim anymore. He can't really get to the basket. 11.6 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's been really problematic defensively. He's had a lot of struggles on that end. So yeah, all around, it's just disappointing to see where this has gone.
The wording that the Knicks used in their press release made it sound as though this was Kemba's decision. Do you have a sense of that's? I'd imagine it's probably a mutual. I can't imagine Kemba going to the Knicks and saying, "Hey, I don't want to play anymore this season."
Yeah, I mean, my guess is they probably said, "Hey, we will play you occasionally off the bench." The rest of the way, Derrick Rose is supposed to be back sometime soon. We know he's going to play a good amount. They've also got Emmanuel Quickly, who they want to get minutes for there. But that would be my guess, is they said, hey, we'll get you in games on occasion, kind of treat him like he's a 12th to 15th guy on the roster. And he probably doesn't want to do that. So, at this point in his career, so it probably is one of those things where it probably was fairly mutual in that sense of, all right, hey, just, fine, let me sit and we'll go from there. The reality is next season, I'm pulling it up right now, 9.2 million. That's a nice piece of salary matching to put into a trade, but it's not going to get you anything on his own. It just, there's no way anybody's going to, be interested in that for Kemba. But yeah, you get a team where they want to move a guy. The Knicks have a lot of interesting options this offseason because you've got Alec Burks at 10 million, Evan Fournier at 18, Nerlens Noel at 9.2 million. That's without kind of dipping into any of the younger guys. So you've got options there, right? You can kind of get to whatever number you need to if you really want to go that direction in a trade. And if that's where the Knicks want to go, then I get it for keeping Kemba on, on the books and having him for that. But otherwise, I don't know. I'd rather just, set the guy free. Maybe somebody else thinks he can play a role for them the rest of the year.
I think that's the unfortunate part here is we typically see teams try to do right by veterans. And I think Kemba definitely fits in that category where and maybe we don't know, maybe there just wasn't a lot of interest out there. Maybe Kemba was hearing, hey, if you do wind up on the buyout market, you may not find a landing spot. Like if that's the case, okay,
Sure.
right? I mean, so there could be other factors here, but in general, if there is a player that's languishing like they are right now on the Knicks, what you typically see NBA teams do just to foster some goodwill around the league is buy that player out, let them go try to continue their career somewhere else, particularly when there's somebody like Kemba, been a veteran in the league, done some good things in the league. You try to do right by them. But again, it feels like there's got to be some other factors here that are preventing that from happening. And maybe it is just the Knicks wanting to use his deal in a trade.
And there's a chance too. Kemba was like, you can straight waive me. I'm not
Yes.
giving any money back too, right? Which, I mean, he gave back money to to get out of OKC. So he may be saying, hey, I'm not giving up even more money now. Basically the Knicks deal made him more or less whole based off of what he gave up to get out of OKC. So that's my guess is it probably is truly mutual where it's like, hey, we're just going to go this direction.
Breakups are never mutual, but sometimes they are. Ian Begley, by the way,
Thanks,
just to close this out, with a fortuitously timed tweet, Ian Begley says Tom Thibodeau said Derrick Rose and RJ Barrett both went through full practices today. Will be evaluated tomorrow. Today was Rose's first day with taking contact. So again, that falls in line with Rose being on the verge of returning, which obviously would complicate the Kemba Walker situation even further in terms of him finding minutes, even if it was off the bench.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense, right? That's where we're headed, right? It's just there weren't going to be a lot of minutes anyway, and here we go.
All right, let's stick with New York guards. Kyrie Irving, who Ron Gutterman broke down for us earlier today, the situation going on with potentially the mandates changing, which might allow Kyrie to play in home games. This has been kind of the buzz all along has been, well, if something changes at some point, that could definitely change things quite a bit for the Nets. A Nets team that struggled. They're in the play-in tournament as of right now, if the playoffs were to start today. But if the Nets wind up, and again, big if, with a healthy Kyrie, healthy KD, you get Ben Simmons ramped up, which what we've heard is it's going to be a few weeks for that to happen. They could be the team that nobody wants to see in round one. I mean, if you're the Bucks, if you're the Heat, you're somebody that's near the top of the East, and your reward is suddenly you get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons comes back and you've got to play that team in round one, that doesn't feel like much of a reward for being at the top of the conference.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on with that because I mean, Kevin Durant alone is a handful in a 7-game series. He can win games almost by himself, and then you get Kyrie in there, and if Simmons is kind of going, my guess is it's going to take a little while for the Nets to find their footing, and I don't know that a month of regular season games or whatever it's going to be is going to be enough. To be clear, too, the mayor said in a few weeks, we will start these things. There was a little bit of, I think, optimistic phrasing in some tweets.
It's not happening now
today of how soon this might happen. This was, more in a few weeks, we'll start looking at, where we may go versus in a few weeks, it'll go this way. Now, maybe it happens very quickly and my reading of it is incorrect, but I don't know that we're going to see Kyrie, play in the next couple weeks, but I do think this is trending towards by the time we get to the postseason, he'll be able to play in home games in Brooklyn.
I agree with you. I think the knee-jerk reaction that we're going to see from a lot of people is just, oh my gosh, the Nets are a juggernaut again. They've got Kyrie back for every single game. I think what the last few seasons in the NBA have showed us is that chemistry matters. Chemistry matters. In fact, chemistry and continuity, it matters a lot. And there are times where just talent wins out and just putting enough talent on the floor works. But in the case of the Nets, I think that the downfall of the Nets come playoff time will probably be the lack of time on the court together during the regular season because they didn't have a chance to really build that chemistry. And part of that is because I think there are other very strong teams in the Eastern Conference right now that do have that chemistry, particularly we're looking at, say, the Milwaukee Bucks. That, I think, could wind up being the ultimate downfall of the Nets. But again, like I said, never fun when you're the opposing team and you look across the court and you see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and then you add in some shooting and Seth Curry. They've got some pieces that can make them a handful for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, look at, and I'm not trying to prop you up and bring you back here, but look at the Lakers last year, right? They were up 2-1. I think people forget that. They were up 2-1 in that series on the Suns. And then guys get hurt and the wheels came off and it, all went sideways on them the rest of the way. And then, it looks like a less close series than it maybe, not maybe, but really probably was. So yeah, that's what you don't want to have, right? You don't want to be, hey, we worked really hard. We got this great record. We're a top 2 seed and crap,
right.
Like that's, that's the downside. Now, there's still a possibility, right? As we look at these standings today, they'd be in the play-in, as you said. They would have to go to Toronto first, and there's no sign that that's going to change. So I don't think Kyrie would be able to play in Toronto. But that's why you want to be 7 or 8 because then you get that second shot if you lose that first one, right? You get that second shot to get in. Here's the question I'm going to ask
opportunity. Let's not use shot in relation to the Nets and Kyrie Irving.
Good call. All right, that's true. Yeah, you got to get the first shot there if you're going to get the second one, right? So let's use the standings as they are today. Let's just say Miami and Chicago finish 1-2. Do you, if we're going in and Kyrie's available, Simmons is playing, but maybe still some bumps in the road with that as far as him adjusting and adapting to the team, would you pick the Nets over the Heat or the Bulls in a first round
assuming
series?
Everyone is healthy?
Yeah, everybody's as healthy as they're going to be.
And that's where the chemistry, I think, comes into play. I think we've seen the Bulls hit a different level when they've got everybody healthy. The Heat as well. And the Heat have enough continuity, I believe, from the previous seasons to where their chemistry level is going to be there. Talent-wise, could they be there? Absolutely. But I think trying to throw everything together, particularly who knows when the mandate gets lifted and you can start getting Kyrie back with the team in game situations more often with him playing home games. That's what I think is going to be tough. It's hard to get everybody back and going that quickly. So no, I wouldn't favor them in that, but I think they can give them a run for their money if they're at full strength. I think they can make it difficult on them, but I wouldn't pick against the Heat or the Bulls in that scenario.
I think I would pick them to beat the Bulls, all things being equal. I just think they've got enough talent to do that. I think the Heat would get them. I think the Heat have a lot of defenders that they can run at Kevin Durant. If Ben Simmons is going to be a big part of things, the Heat will play that zone heavily and kind of do what they can to take him away from being a functional part of the Brooklyn offense. So, yeah, one thing that does get a lot more interesting if this comes to pass, they become a far more interesting team, because I kind of looked at it as I didn't think they'd get through and have any chance in the first round with Kyrie being a part-time guy. I just thought there's too many other things that have to go right for them, for that to what do you make of these final what do they have? They are 23 games to go. Kyrie was only going to be able to play in 8 of them. Let's say he cannot, I don't know if I can fully figure this out on the fly, but let's say he can get in 12, 13, let's say half the games. Those games become really interesting, because now you're having to figure this out and piece this together on the fly of how this team's going to work. So, yeah, I mean, definitely we'll be watching, right, to see how this comes together. Full disclosure, they will not have any of these guys tomorrow night when they play Boston.
Correct.
It's going to be kind of a repeat of what happened when the Celtics played them the other day. But they will have Seth Curry this time around. They will have Andre Drummond, but they're not going to have Kyrie, no Simmons. KD won't be back. Steve Nash says it's still a way. Steve Nash actually said, I'm curious to get your take on this, that Kevin Durant is closer to playing than Ben Simmons.
That's interesting. That's it. I mean, I know it takes a while to ramp up and be ready to play NBA,
Sure.
but on the flip side, it's
a lot of
in terms of just being physically prepared. I mean, like going up and down the court and playing 5-on-5, that's different than just in good shape cardio wise and I'm doing drills and stuff like that. There's a different level there, but that does feel like a lot of ramp up time. But then maybe that's where we throw in the mental health piece. Maybe that takes him a little bit of time to really get himself where he needs to be. So I don't want to question that too much, but it does seem like a lot of if he was truly in shape and good to go. I mean, heck, we even saw James Harden not in shape and be out there and play and still provide some stuff. So if he was training this whole time and in shape, you would think he would be out there a little bit sooner, but maybe we're not putting enough into the mental health side of things. So maybe that's a factor as well.
I'm going to give you my theory.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He returns mid-March, which gets him past that game in Philly. That way it's not even a thing, right? They don't even have to sit him out or anything. They just keep saying he's not quite ready. I mean, that's only, what is that? That's about 15 days away now. So that's my guess. It's about 2 more weeks. Then he's ready to go. And that's when he plays. It gives him a month to figure stuff out throughout the rest of this regular season. That's my theory.
I hadn't thought of that, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing because I was excited to see that. Now, from Simmons' standpoint, from Simmons' standpoint, though, that would probably be rough. That would be a rough environment. There's no question. But from the fan perspective, can the
Oh
player
yeah.
rise up and perform despite the crowd being hostile and all that kind of it. There's some narratives there that are interesting, but
I'm already on record saying I don't think he ever plays another game in Philadelphia again
that's
in his
possible.
career, unless it's a playoff game.
Yeah, playoffs he has
Playoff
to.
game's a little different. You have to play, but I don't think you'll ever see him play in Philly again. I mean, look at Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie spent years not playing in Cleveland.
True.
Then didn't play in Boston up until the end of last year. Some of those were injuries, to be fair, but sometimes there were times where it was just it's a rest day,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't even come. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys who don't show up certain places sometimes. There was a thing for some guys. So yeah, that's just a theory I'm working on. I don't think we see him until after that game happens.
He was asked about it when he did his media
Mm-hmm.
availability, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that he was hoping he would play in
Sure.
that one, but we'll see. We'll see if it winds
Yeah.
up happening.
Yep.
We need to move on though. The Kings are likely to trade Rashawn Holmes this summer, which makes sense.
Sure.
We talked about this when the Sabonis trade went down. That okay, if Sabonis and Miles Turner, who can somewhat space the floor out to the 3-point line, wasn't working, is Sabonis and Rashawn Holmes, who can't space the floor, going to somehow work better? I think Rashawn Holmes has been very effective for the Kings when he's been out there on the floor. I think he's going to have some trade value, and it makes sense that if the Kings have said Sabonis is our guy moving forward, he's the guy we want teamed with De'Aaron Fox, I think you kind of have to figure out what you can get for Rashawn Holmes. So not a surprise at all that his name's now popping up. In fact, as soon as the Sabonis trade went down, I think you and I both said that maybe there was a Holmes trade coming on the heels of that.
Yeah, and it would make sense why there wasn't one right at the trade deadline, right? Because that would be a full pivot to
Mm-hmm.
putting together something that wasn't already planned. But yeah, I mean, it's if you just look at his raw stats, you'd say, wow, he's dropped off a little bit after signing the big contract and all that. But it's really his playing time is down. He's playing 5 minutes less per game this year, and this is not influenced by the Sabonis trade. He hasn't been there long enough to influence season-long stats. But because of that, because of his playing time being down, his shots per game are down, and then everything else, his rebounds, his points, all that stuff are down a little bit. So I'm with you. I think he's still a really good player. I mean, shooting 67% from the field, which is, pretty absurd.
Yeah.
Now, what's funny is there was a point in Rashawn Holmes' second season in the league for a tanking Philly team where he took 1.5 3-pointers per game, and he made 35% of them. It was like, all right, maybe there's going to be something here. Maybe this is coming. Since then, he's taken like a total of probably, let's see, I'm going to do some quick math here. He's taken a total of 47 3-pointers. So in the next 5 years.
Oh, man.
So that didn't end up becoming a thing.
Mm-mm.
But, but my guess is you're right. And the Kings are going to say, this is not a workable duo. We don't have a reason to hold Holmes as a backup center to Sabonis. There's not a big enough role, and somebody will grab him. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
11.2 million next year. That's a very easy number to trade for. He essentially makes the mid-level exception. That's basically what his salary is. So I would be all over that if I was a team that needed a center for the next few years.
As a super bouncy, athletic rim runner type guy, there's a lot of different places where he would make some sense. I mean, the first team that pops into my head is Dallas. Like, I mean, just visions of him catching lobs from Luka, like that would be a thing that would be a lot of fun. So I think there's plenty of.
And on the nights when you have need the shooting, you still have Maxi Kleba. You have Davis Bertans if you need to go that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that one.
Exactly. Yep. So I think there'll be a market for him. Interested to see what the Kings can get. I think he's good enough to where, as much as we say, centers that don't shoot threes, oh no, that's the thing of the past. We don't like that. No, I think he's plenty effective out there. He can be a force for you, and I think the Kings can get something for him.
Yeah, I kind of like that Dallas one. I wonder if you could build something around Reggie Bullock or Tim Hardaway Jr. if you wanted to go that direction, and kind of you use that as your baseline, right, for building on a trade. You could maybe get to something there that benefits both sides.
Speaking of trades, according to Zach Lowe, the Rockets and Lakers. So what we had heard, there were some rumblings. Ramona Shelburne from ESPN had mentioned that the trade that was out there has been long discussed as Russell Westbrook in exchange for John Wall, but the Lakers were going to have to attach the 2027 first to Russell Westbrook. I said from the Lakers side of things, there's no chance you do that. You said the same thing, Keith, as a objective observer. Here,
Yeah, it's just too much.
yeah, it's too much to give. But then Ramona Shelburne had mentioned that maybe it wasn't a first round pick. Maybe it could have been done for a
Zach
little.
said that.
Yes, but Ramona had mentioned it before
Oh,
Zach's podcast
yes. True.
that maybe it was going to be a little bit less. And then Zach Lowe
Yes.
provided a little bit more clarification in terms of what that would be, less than a first. He said perhaps a pick swap, the 2027 first pick swap, and the Lakers weren't interested in doing that. I was heading to this scenario thinking, you know what? If, and given how poorly the Westbrook thing has worked out, if it's something like a second round pick or whatever, you probably just bite the bullet and do it. The optics don't look great considering it wasn't that long ago that a first round pick was attached to John Wall to get Russell Westbrook. And like, that's understandable and everything. But given all the factors included here, just to see if it works, it's probably not going to hurt you to give that a try. How do you value a pick swap though? Where do you fall on that? Would you have done that if you were the Lakers, if it was a pick swap? It's so hard to gauge value on a pick swap.
Yeah, so here's my thing with the Lakers in general, whether it be a pick swap or the pick. Yes, if you're the Rockets, you would take Westbrook in the pick for Wall because you're not losing anything there, right? Even if you then turned around this summer and flipped Westbrook for, better money, second round pick from a team that was really like, hey, we want to be the next team to take a shot on Russ or whatever. You're coming out ahead anyway because you're not changing anything salary wise and you're getting a pick. But I'm gonna kind of flip it to when we were talking a lot about the THT, Kendrick Nunn, and a pick package. My challenge is continually with Lakers picks is they don't always look that good, especially when they're that far out, because they're the Lakers. If there's any team in the league that I trust will reset, rebuild quickly and go, it's the Lakers. Now, a lot of people have jumped on me about those thoughts with, you say that, but post, pre-LeBron, they were, 5 years in a row of terrible records or whatever it was. Well, and not to disparage it all, but they were sitting on the terrible Kobe contract at that point,
For
right?
a couple of years,
that was he had gotten paid for being Kobe Bryant and being the Lakers legend, right? He wasn't what he was. I mean, one of those years he could barely play, right? So that was, almost kind of, lost money, right, on that deal.
It was a thank you. It was a career appreciation.
That's exactly what it was. And
yeah.
I'm not saying the Lakers did anything wrong.
No. That was part of the plan.
But yeah, exactly. And it made it extremely difficult to build a functional roster that was going to be competitive. But then look what happened once they finally got into a spot where things have cleared wise, and now we're going to get LeBron and then win a championship and all this stuff. I'm not saying it's easy, and there definitely you can pick fault and find fault with the Lakers front office and everything else that's gone on over the last year. But you're telling me 2027, so essentially 6 seasons from now, get super excited about a swap for a pick? I might be, what am I, do I have faith that the Houston Rockets in 2027 are going to be better than the Los Angeles Lakers? No, I do not. I'm sorry to Houston, but no, history tells me the Lakers will be better by then. There may be some lean years between now and then. Maybe it gets a little ugly for a few years, but the Lakers are one of the more sure things in sports that they're going to figure it out eventually. If for no other reason than, or we have a clean salary cap sheet and a bunch of guys want to come play for the Lakers in LA, then you go. So, yeah. So that's the only reason why from the Rockets side, I don't really like that from their side. From the Lakers side, yeah, I probably would have done it for sure because I'm not losing anything there. Yeah, it's probably, I would feel most confident if I was, who knows if Rob Pelinka is making those decisions right then anyway. So really, if I'm him, I don't really care then at all. But if I'm Jeannie Buss and the ownership group, yeah, I can feel confident that in 2027 we'll be better than the Rockets, so it won't matter. So I would have done the trade.
I mean, it could be catastrophic, right? If you wind up with like the first pick or something like that. But
could be, yeah.
But it could also, like we said, with all these pick swaps, it could be nothing. It could be completely unusable.
Yeah.
And in that case, I agree with you. That's where I'm tempted to just say, yeah, you just do it. From the Rockets side, I guess you're just, hoping that things break your way because it could wind up turning into something really, really good in the future. And really, you're not you're not hurting yourself at
You're out
all. You're just
nothing.
swapping the
Yeah.
same contract
Yep.
that you're paying Russell Westbrook to stay home, just like you would pay John Wall to stay
Yeah.
home. Maybe you could
Yep.
argue, okay,
It just doesn't do anything for me,
right,
right? Like
well,
I'm just like, all right, whatever. Still, I'm
it's
still good to
something.
do it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
So
So
when I'm looking at that though,
that was a long time about a trade that didn't happen.
the only thing that I saw pop up is, let's say the Lakers, they do a pick swap for 2027 and then they try to move that pick. How does that complicate things?
Yeah, it definitely makes it complicated because then you have to write the language of, or you get the Rockets pick if Rockets swap. I mean, there's a couple of those out there right now that are outstanding. And that's just essentially how you write the language in there. But people have asked, like, but they can't because they owe that pick to the Pelicans. It's a swap. So you could do a swap and they could trade the 2027 pick anyway. Yep. Pelicans pick will resolve by 2025 at the latest. So they're clear anyway. But yeah, it swaps. That's why I always think about the Celtics Nets trade. They got years of first round picks, and then every middle year in between, they got the right to swap picks. That's why you add those in there, because
you can't trade them.
You do, just to say, hey, let's swap as well if you can.
Right. It's not like you can go trade 3 first round picks for Bo Callahan or something like that. All right, let's talk about James Wiseman. It's like he could be on the way back as of March 1st. Anyway, I mean, it would be a season debut for him. Be nice to see. I mean, it feels like it's been way too long since, and it has been way too long since he's been on the floor, but always nice to see players getting healthy. And who knows? I mean, look, the Warriors are pretty well set. Hopefully Draymond can come back healthy and he can get things rolling for them. They're going to be a tough out for anybody in the playoffs. Could very well wind up being the team to head to the finals this season. They've been great. But Wiseman maybe gives them another element. And so I'm interested to see if he can, number one, come back, stay healthy, but what kind of impact he can make for the Warriors.
Yeah, the reality is right now, the only center that they have on the roster is Kevon Looney, because Draymond Green kind of eats up the remaining center minutes when he's not there, which Draymond is not right now. We didn't get the best update in the world going into the All-Star break on him. It was kind of a, we'll see, when we're back after the break. So yeah, adding any other guy, because then it's they're playing Otto Porter Jr. at the 5. They're playing Iguodala at the 5 some, Kuminga at the 5 some, Nemanja Bjelica, all kind of around Kevon Looney, and they're getting by. I mean, I think back to that game that they had with the Lakers shortly before the break. They were more than getting by. The Lakers couldn't get anything done at the rim, despite the fact that it was Otto Porter Jr. was like the Warriors center. So they clearly know how to make it work with guys who aren't really centers. But yeah, you can throw a guy out there who's 7'1". Yeah, I mean it's probably not going to be bad. Now let's see where this goes, because we were told in November he was going to start 5-on-5. He had a setback. He didn't return when they thought, and then we heard maybe December. Here we are. We're here now. Maybe March 1st. Let's go. But yeah, I think for a team that didn't make any kind of trade deadline acquisition, doesn't look like they'll do anything on the buyout market. If you can get 10 or 15 minutes a night out of James Wiseman that aren't bad, go, right? Let's go. I mean, that's, that's better than kind of doing this piecemeal stuff there. And I left out, and I should not have. Juan Toscano-Anderson plays a lot of small ball 5 for them too. Did you see? Gosh, I wish I could remember who put this out.
Contest?
The defense? No, not the.
God.
No, we're not talking about that again. The defensive versatility metrics that were going around Twitter today. I don't know if you saw them. Juan Toscano-Anderson is this year's Ben Simmons, meaning he's the most versatile defender in the NBA of his minutes. And they do this by matchup data through Synergy, I believe it is, and Second Spectrum. So you're really getting the sense of who is guarding who. He has guarded every 1 through 5, each position, at least 18% of the time. So it's essentially saying he splits it almost evenly. Wow. 1 through 5. Like that's pretty good stuff, considering they are, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So that just throw that out there, because I forgot as I rattled off all those other veteran guys. I forgot to add the one guy who's had a huge impact for them, kind of playing every position on the floor.
That's incredible. I did not see that stat, and that is absolutely amazing. And I mean, That's found gold for a team like the Warriors to have a guy that can do that on the defensive end of the floor, which too often doesn't
Yep.
get enough recognition because a lot of it is off ball, and we tend not to
Hmm.
notice that as much because we're
Yep.
watching, our eye follows that bouncing
Sure.
ball. Um,
Let's one quick thing on
yeah.
him too. Restricted free agent this
Ooh,
summer. You might get a team or two, make this a little interesting and challenge the Warriors. How far do you want to take that tax bill?
I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith, did that just set the market?
Maybe.
I wonder.
Yeah. Let's see what he
He got what,
is.
4 years,
Let me do some math
54,
here.
I think.
A little older than I thought. Geez, he's going to be 29 at the
Oh.
end of this season. So that's a little older than I thought. I'm going to check and make sure that's right. Maybe my note is wrong because I didn't think he was quite that old.
But while you're checking that, one thing I did want to mention is we talk about the buyout market a lot.
I am right. He is going to be 29 in
okay.
April.
So
Sorry.
I was just gonna say James Wiseman is essentially the Warriors buyout edition, and you said 10 to 15 minutes. That's probably better than what you're gonna get on the buyout market. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
all right, let's move on to another big man. Unfortunate, maybe fortunate, and based on how much they've been winning, and they don't really want to. Yusuf Nurkic, plantar fasciitis, out for now at least 4 weeks. I wonder if his season's going to be in jeopardy. Like if he comes back 4 weeks from now, is there any real urgency to rush him back? If there's any kind of soreness there, probably not. But in any event, the Blazers will be without him for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, anytime you get post All-Star break, especially one as late as it is this year, and you're talking 4 weeks, we're talking end of March now. That leaves you only about 2 weeks left in the season. I start to why would you bother? Now, yeah, if you're 10th or 9th and you're really pushing up those standings and you really do want to get in, all right, bring them back. But if you're Nurkic too, you got to think about I'm a free agent this summer. I don't want this lingering into free agency and impacting where I may go, as a free agent and what kind of contract I might get. So, yeah, I mean they are 10th right now. They've won 4 in a row going into the All-Star break. They are 2 games up on San Antonio and New Orleans, 3.5 up on the Kings.
They're probably going to get that.
The pillow fight continues.
Yeah. Yep. Did you see, and we'll wrap this up in a minute because I have to do radio soon, but there was a video going around showcasing Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons and them pulling off the same moves with the explanation that they have the same trainer. And Simons is like motion for motion with Lillard, pull up, through the legs, sidestep into a 3, all that kind of stuff. It was pretty cool. And it makes you see like how good Anthony Simons really is.
Really good, man. That is part of why I feel a little bit better about Portland's ability to flip this thing quickly and put it together. I don't think in retrospect, Anthony Simons is the big drop off from CJ McCollum that some people think he might be. I think he's ready to take on everything CJ did for that team, because you got to remember, right? CJ was the starting shooting guard and the backup point guard for years of that run. Simons can do that. You get the right third guard in there. Maybe that's Josh Hart. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that he's a big part of why I believe they might be able to turn that thing around very quickly.
All right, last thing we need to mention, Isaiah Thomas. You told me about this as we're starting the show. Drops 45 points in the G League. This man can still put the ball in the basket. He should be on an NBA roster somewhere. He's talented enough to be in the NBA. The challenge has always been defensively. How do you play around him? And, but the bottom line is he's still an extremely talented basketball player. He's too good for the G League, but I think he's such a challenge to scheme around at the NBA level. I'm curious to see where it goes. I hope he winds up back in the league, but clearly he's too good for the G League right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of turned into that classic 4A stuff in Major League Baseball, right? Too good for the minors, not quite good enough for the bigs. But yeah, his first game with the Grand Rapids Gold, he scored 42 points in 42 minutes, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and he shot 16 of 30 from the field. Today, it was an afternoon game in the G League. 45 points, shot 14 out of 27, slacking on the boards, only 3 rebounds this time, and 5 assists, and only no steals this time around, but played 39 minutes. So clearly healthy enough to be out there playing, a lot of minutes, but yeah, I mean, just filling it up. So yeah, I will forever root for Isaiah Thomas to get back to an NBA roster. Let's go. Somebody make this happen. At least for rest of the season. One of these teams that needs a point guard or whatever. Let's go get this guy on the roster.
Absolutely, would love to see it happen. All right, everybody, we'll wrap things up there. Make sure you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. Don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. And if you're a podcast listener, don't forget to follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, toss us that 5-star review. We certainly do appreciate it. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.